Good morning, everyone. My name's Doc, and welcome to episode 6 of The Rounds. Today, I have with me a certified gigabrain, one of the best traders in the space, and in my opinion, one of the best educators as well. You can find him here on YouTube, over on Twitter, but most importantly, at The Paragon, which is him and Bitcoin Charlie's educational group. So, without further ado, thank you, Magus, for joining us today. Welcome to The Rounds.
Thanks for having me on. That was an incredibly kind intro. So, what plus 5 ego points right there, obviously.
Hey, I gotta speak the truth, man. People, everyone already knows who you are, but I gotta give you that. I gotta give you that warm welcome, anyways.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So it's actually really funny. We sat on here talking for like half an hour before we even hit record, which seems to be like the most common theme with these podcasts that I do. Every guest that I've had on, it's just like we have infinite long conversations where I'm like, dude, we should probably just hit record one of these minutes. It's so easy to blow time when you're around like peers.
For sure.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to ask you, like right off the top, was, for me and a lot of people that I talked to in Q4 was like the most overwhelming period that I've experienced being in crypto. Like we went straight up 0 to 100, all cylinders fired right as soon as that Cointelegraph fake news headline went off, right? And just liquidity kept trickling in, searching for a home, coins you haven't heard of firing off left and right, like everything was blowing up. And just from the outside looking in, because I've been in the Barracon, so I get to see you intimately, like week to week. It seems like that wasn't an issue for you, that you had your workflow and your life kind of balanced, where you were still getting in your IRL like workouts or whatever. Is that true from the outside looking in? How was your experience?
So the longer you do this stuff, the more easily you're going to be able to handle that. Because as crazy as Q4 seemed at moments, when there was just all these new altcoins emerging that were just on these crazy trends and stuff. It's been crazier, definitely 2021. And I was really inexperienced in 2017, but even that, it definitely can get a lot wilder than it did. But I don't know. I would just probably say the main reason is because I've spent a lot of time working on what you just said, kind of organization and workflow, because I've just found that when you feel like you're not organized, or for myself at least, when I feel like I'm not organized and like I'm playing catch up, it's just a really horrible place to be in mentally. I find that my stress levels are going to be higher. Actually, I could probably chalk everything up to that. Is that like I try to set up everything to reduce my stress levels. I used, back in the days where I had a corporate job, I was always stressed. Meeting other people's deadlines and things. So when I transitioned over to this kind of lifestyle, something that I placed huge emphasis on was like stress reduction. So hopefully that's an adequate answer.
So you're not like me, sleeping with your phone in your hand at night, waking up every few hours, check prices, wondering if there's a liquidation cascade or whatnot.
The only time that happens to me is when the alerts go off. So I do have it set up so that like I have specific alerts that will go off that are incredibly annoying. And sometimes I will get woken up in the middle of the night. A lot of times though, it saves me. Just a few weeks ago in December, we had like a really big liquidation cascade where a bunch of longs got stopped out. And, I had like my initial alerts like wake me up and I was like, oh, okay, Bitcoin's down 2%. And like, that's, whatever, I'm going back to sleep. I wake up to it being down 5%. And I'm like, oh, damn, these longs are getting clapped up. And, then I wake up, I get my next alert where it's down 9%. And I'm like, oh, well, it might be 4 a.m, but it's time to wake up and go to work now. And I put in some trades. So,
Yeah.
I would say most of the time I try not to wake up unless it's really good.
Was that the Say Dalai Lama? Was that day?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
It moved like 50% intraday. It was stupid.
Yeah, that was an insane day for sure. Actually, it's funny because I think that day, just from the outside looking, like my point of view was people did really well. Like my CT, my Twitter, like the people that I follow, I tend to only follow like really good traders. Like I don't really follow hundreds and thousands of people. I just try to follow like 200 people. And my timeline was really euphoric that day. Like people were prepared. They knew funding was high. They knew like this liquidation is going to come anyways. They were prepared to buy the dip. So everyone was happy. And then there's this whole other subsection like that I saw like a few days later where activity's down, engagement's down, Discord's not popping off as much. And I was like, damn, people really probably gave away months of P&L on that one cascade.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it was one of the largest altcoin liquidation cascades that we've ever had. So definitely was a, period where people were, it's Pavlovian argument, right? Everyone was just overly comfortable with what altcoins had been doing the past couple of months. Prior to that liquidation cascade, I don't think there was anything super serious to the downside for a while. So it was basically just if you bought the dip on altcoins that were strong, you were making stupid money.
Yeah.
So eventually people get overly comfortable with that, and thus the wipe comes one day.
I think to pour salt in the wounds of anyone that like got hurt that day is the majority of altcoins just bounced right back to where they were. Like whether they had a full dolly into fresh highs or they just kind of rejected that point of breakdown, they just ended up right where they were like an hour later, which I think mentally could really mess with a lot of people too.
Yeah, I mean, some made fresh high. I mean, like, I think it was Say was the coin I
Yeah.
was mainly trading that day. I think OP as well, but Say literally made an all-time high right afterwards. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that is pretty frustrating for people. It probably just shows you how, right? I mean, an event like that has nothing to do with like repricing of the assets or anything. It's just simply um, the simple argument of if you put pressure on overly exposed positions and they start to unwind, you trigger more and more until basically it's like you might not have even been poorly positioned, but other people's mistakes make your trade a mistake now. And like, that's just crazy how these things snowball. And like you said, an hour later, everything was exactly where it was, or maybe even higher. And it's
Yeah.
just, that's the brutal nature
Yeah.
of
And
these markets.
and it seems like these events always come towards like the final submission towards the trend, right? People will be super late towards buying the dip in that mentality, and when they finally capitulate and be like, okay, well, I've seen this work for 3 months in a row, it's kind of like the one that they were like, okay, I'm gonna go in with leverage now and buy this dip, and then they just get destroyed, and it's the reverse argument. Now where people could be like, okay, well, we're back in a liquidity regime, range regime. I'm not going to do anything. And before you know it, we're firing off again, maybe a month from now, 2 months from now, who knows when. So it really pays to like have that fluid mindset day to day, week to week, and always like reframing your baseline and not just kind of letting the wave of the markets carry you.
Yeah, exactly. And you basically will, for most people, that lesson will be taught with pain. Even, myself, I'm not even going to try to be smart here, right? Like I learned those lessons because I had catastrophic loss, right, from those kind of days.
Yeah.
So I think the best example for me, which really changed my mindset, is going to be the May 2021 nuke, which was probably the largest sell-off event
Yeah.
in terms of volume and stuff that we ever had. And we had just had, that was May, so basically it had almost a year of up only. I think the market started to really trend up after summertime, so basically in Q3 of 2020 was probably when Bitcoin's trend started to be more healthy. And so we basically had a year of up only. And if I'm being honest, I came into this past cycle prepared. So I was seeing things I had never seen before. And it's really easy to get caught up in those numbers and complacent because complacency almost worked for you, right? Like with the DeFi cycle, for example, I missed DeFi summer, but I killed it on DeFi winter. And basically just getting into DeFi bags at the end of, Q3, early Q4 of 2020, and then just being complacent and doing nothing for 3 months meant you outperformed everybody in the market by a lot, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like complacency, like, is it useful until it's not, right? Just interesting how that works.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually skipped this question. I want to go back to this for a minute with the whole time organization. When the market gets crazy, one of the things that one of the ways that you trade and hang your hat on is scalping, like intraday. Would you say that's like by design that you went down that route so that you could have a normal life, so you could be like, well, these are my work hours. This is how I'm going to spend in front of the desk, so that I can kind of turn off because someone like me who's on the opposite end, who doesn't intraday scalp and stuff like that, there are times where it's like, well, Asia hours are popping off. Okay, well, I guess, I've got to be trading during Asia. Well, my entries are coming at 2 in the morning. They're coming at 4 in the afternoon, right? So being a swing trader or being like a 4 hourly trader, hourly trader, I have no control over it. Was that by design for you, or was that something that you just drawn to from the start?
So yeah, I would say it was by design, but probably because when I really started to go down that route, I still wasn't as experienced as I thought I was. So it definitely is a grass is always greener kind of thing. So it's not like one approach is like definitively better. It definitely is based off of your own lifestyle and constraints and stuff. So I would say that when I started to trading really seriously, I did want to lean much more into the lower time frame stuff, right? The scalping and the intraday, because I wanted to have that semblance of consistency. I was going to be quitting a corporate job that paid me, a salary every month. And I was really worried about having a lack of consistency in my income. So, the obvious argument is, well, oh, I'm going to learn how to scalp, and then I could theoretically sit down for several hours a day and almost have it feel like a job where I put in the work and I make money every day. I think as time goes on, I moved away from that mindset a lot towards I really only want to be focused on scalp or intraday, which generally are actually two pretty different regimes, which is my next kind of point, is like just picking the right time to do it rather than trying to it's all about the market is your boss. You get called into work and you don't you just have to go into work when you get called in, or you just make no money, and you can take that choice as well. So yeah, I mean, hopefully that kind of covers it. I lost my
Yeah.
train of thought a little bit, but essentially I would just TLDR it all as the grass is not, it's like it really starts with the grass is always greener idea. I much more nowadays. I would much rather lean into momentum plays and higher time frame stuff when I can, and then to explain it maybe a little bit better. If we look at last year, for example, break it down by quarter. Q1 of last year was crazy momentum because right off the open, Bitcoin legged up from right off from the yearly open. We legged from probably 15 or 16K to like 21 or 22 very quickly, right? Within the first like 2 weeks. So we obviously had huge momentum and chasing bait off altcoins was the play. So pretty much everything I did at Q1 was altcoin momentum plays. But when you get to places like Q2 and Q4 or Q2 and Q3 of last year, excuse me, volatility was not there. There was no momentum in the market. Q2 in particular, Bitcoin was entirely range bound for, it was just bloody chop for like an entire quarter, zero momentum at all. So during those periods where your benchmark asset is trading and there's no opportunity, that's when I look to the altcoins to scalp a lot more. And coincidentally, it was, Q3 of last year was really, what I would call cartel season, because it was just all these either old or new coins that they were just getting pumped full of, volume and the activity rates. There's so many people trading, everybody remembers the TRBs, the perps, the BLZs, all these things that were just putting in ridiculously high activity rates. So that's when in a long roundabout way, that's what I'm trying to say, is that with scalping, it's much more about just finding the right time to scalp.
I
I think
think
I overspoke there a little bit.
No, I think one thing that you said there is interesting, how you'll shift your own game plan and strategy based on the market. Like you'll go from, hey, this is what the market's giving me. I'm going to focus on this side of my skill set. This is what the market's giving me. I'm going to go this way. So in a way, you're not really classically how they say traders are just one trick ponies. Like I'm going to dominate, or I'm going to learn one section of the market. I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to ignore everything else. You are actually diversifying your trading based on the meta, which is something I myself have tried to do, because me, the way I look at markets is very simple. It's just like we're range bound or we're trending, right? If we're trending, I want to focus more on an EMA based approach. If we're range bound, I want to focus more on liquidity and like, classic ICT, smart money concept type of trading, right? So I try to, build my skill set so that there's never a market where I can't participate. Because I think that might be the most frustrating thing for some people is like you force your system on a meta or on a market that's not, symbiotic with what you know. What is that a fair characterization of what you're doing?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, for sure. Okay. The reason I bring that up is like a lot of people are confused on my system nowadays. They're like, well, are you trading price action? Are you trading emails? And I'm like, well, I do both. Like it's just based on what the market's giving me. Like right now, it seems to me like Bitcoin's top. We're probably going to put in a range. Most altcoins are going to range. Some will be trending. So like eventually when those last few remaining alts run out of gas, like the whole market's probably going to be range bound. So what EMAs am I going to be trading in that, in that environment?
I
But
think that something I could add to this too, and this does vary a lot based off your own experience levels and, kind of capital levels and stuff too. There's a lot of variables that will go into this, but I do think that if people could just learn to be comfortable not clicking buttons, big breakthrough for me. I
mm,
think that it primarily has just reduced my drawdown periods, right? Where I just am comfortable not being active for longer periods of time than I used to be able to sit through, right? I used to feel the need to click buttons. And I think it's just because I've been doing it long enough now, but I'll go through long periods where I don't trade that much. I didn't trade that much at the end of December because of the holidays, obviously. And as we got into January, we're, over halfway through January, I still haven't traded that much this year. So I've been like on like almost a month break of very little activity in my trading. I'm still like, I have positions open and I'm still doing things because I'm always kind of doing something, but I'm not like over here taking several trades every day, right? Like
right.
I would normally do when I'm active. So I think that people can just find comfort in not needing to participate in everything.
I
Because
think,
go ahead.
no, yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you if you have more.
I was just going to say the simple example is that everybody goes on social media and every single micro move that happens, you see somebody showing that they participated in it and they won.
Yeah,
And look at my W, right? And that destroys our psychology because that makes you think that that's what you're supposed to do when actually it's
exactly.
not.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it can come from a good place too. People that are, driven, growth oriented, they feel like if you're not getting in the reps, it's like if you're working out and you take a week or 2, 3 weeks, you can't afford to do that if you're trying to stay in shape, right? So mentally you have this itch of like, I need to participate. Otherwise the market's going to leave me behind. Right. But
Great point.
yeah. So you can participate. You like what I would say is like you don't need to be full risk on. You don't need to be trading your entire net worth when the market's not as opportune. But there are moments where you can still participate. Like for me, one of the regrets last year was during that cartel season. I had no edge trading cartel coins. I can't read flow as well as other people. I can understand it. I can read it. I know what's going on, but I can't use it actionably, such as like people like yourself. So I felt like I didn't have an edge there. But then I saw other traders like Flawless, for example, who is basically just a price action trader, doing pretty well trading coins like TRB. And then I'm asking myself, well, I can trade that. Why am I completely ignoring this and sidelining myself? There's an opportunity here for me to grow regardless. Like I could just load up a $10 account, $100 account, whatever, and just trade to get better. It doesn't always have to be about, well, I'm gonna need to make $1 million this week.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, wow. Okay. It's funny. Like I think I just had two notes here, and we talked 20 minutes based on two things. I don't even know if I'm gonna get through all the questions that I have lined up for you. Um, but yeah, the next one here is was there a moment for you where you knew that you wanted to trade full time? Was it kind of like a skill set oriented? Like I know I'm competent enough. Was it a love for the game? Did you just hate your old job? What was it that drew you to go from like a part-time trader to like I'm here full time?
So I think I should probably say that I had pretty naive expectations early on, and I think that probably most people do. They think that it's going to be this like idealistic lifestyle and that you're going to do really well all the time and stuff. Um, so I made my decision for two reasons. One, even though I wasn't deserving of it, I had gotten really lucky with crypto in the 2017 cycle and a lot of like equities trades as well. But they weren't even equities trades. I shouldn't even give myself credit for that. I just like bought equities and got lucky that I bought during a 12-year bull market or whatever, you know? So I basically what I'm saying is I had some capital built, which is just, I honestly attribute to mostly luck for sure. And then the other thing was that you already touched on, which is probably one of the most common reasons why people do this stuff. I hated my job. When I got out of college, I got the first kind of corporate job that I could get that seemed all right. And it sucked, right? All the kind of cliche stuff about having lazy old people boss me around and stuff. And it like really killed my motivation as a person too, right? You're all around people that, you know, feel like they've given up, right,
Mhm.
in progress in their life, and that's what you're surrounded by every day. So it was really just a toxic environment. Um, and because I had had some success already, I kind of just convinced myself I could figure it out. So, you know, lots of Dunning-Kruger type of examples where I thought I was smart and only defined that I was an idiot. Which I like to always say, guys, that if you, and we were actually talking about this before we um, turn the recording on. If you don't look back at prior versions of yourself, at like a tweet you put out 6 months ago and think, wow, I was pretty stupid back then you're probably not making that much progress. That's a quote that Sting taught me way back in the day too. So you should always be looking at yourself and be like, wow, I kind of had no idea what I was doing back then. And that rate of progress will obviously slow down eventually, but early on, it should be pretty quick.
Yeah, yeah. On that note, with the whole like old tweet thing, like I was telling you too, I have so many cringe tweets where I'm like, I wish I could go back and delete these things, but I'm leaving them there just to show people like you know how much you can grow in crypto, which I think is a beautiful thing about crypto is like our cycles are so quick that I feel like we get infinite more experience than if you were just trading traditional markets because like the volatility, the cycles, we even have like I would consider last year in 2023, like we had two perfect risk on cycles. Like there was two really nice distributions over 28K back to 25. And I think you could learn a lot just from trading those versus like a whole 4-year cycle, which is, I think, pretty beautiful about crypto.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much consensus what you just said. So I don't like saying it because I don't want to come across as the I've been doing this for almost 9 years, so I know everything, right? But it really is kind of a little bit true, right? That the rate of like the rate that you learn if you're actually grinding in crypto is so fast because you go through so many cycles and regimes in a compressed period of time compared to legacy. So I'm like, you know, at this point, I'm basically like a boomer, you know, like I have like, I look at it like I probably have boomer level experience, you know, like the 50-year-old dude. I'm basically got his experience now is how I look at it.
Yeah.
And obviously I try to keep myself in check a little, you know, with the humility thing. I know you've heard me say it a million times, but always try to remind yourself that you're not as smart as you think you are. Keep
Yeah.
yourself in
The
check.
every time that I start feeling myself and get a little cocky, the
That's when you
market will
lose.
always humble me.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's honestly a beautiful thing, you know, the way that that works. It's the same thing with sports or anything that you do. A lot of the times it's the moments when you feel the most confident about something is when life or the universe, whatever you want to call it to it, comes and gives you a good slap. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing, really.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like notably for me, like my Q4 was kind of like that. I felt, or Q3, I would say was the start of that for me last year, where I was like, I nailed Q1, I nailed Q2. Like, oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm just gonna expect the exact same thing for the market. I'm gonna nail this even harder. And we all know like Q3 to Q4 was a different animal, different beast entirely. And I was in the mindset of like, oh well, I got this. Like, I don't need to work as hard. I don't need to do as much prep work. And immediately I found myself like a little bit behind, you know, behind the ball. And I was like, I gotta step this up. And that was a humbling experience for myself. And that's something I'll never forget. you can never take your foot off the gas as far as like preparation work goes, and just feel like, oh, I got this. That's not going to work in any profession.
Sure. Yeah, the market has an incredible ability to lull people to sleep before things get most exciting. Um, and I think I'm stay on top of that stuff more because I've done exactly what you just said. So there's been a lot of the major volatility events that we've had over the past, year or two. I've been relatively early to for that exact reason that like I've almost learned that when I'm comfortable, like there's just no volatility. There's been no volatility for such a long time. I'm gonna go, you know, stop paying attention. Like 3 days later is when, like almost always when you feel like that is when things heat up again.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing you just mentioned was about sports, like that sports analogy. And I know you're very into sports, but I've never asked you, did you ever play any growing up? Were you an athlete?
I definitely played a lot of sports growing up. But and even into like, my semi-adult years, but um the unironically all the like sports mindset and stuff that I cling to so much nowadays, um what didn't exist in me back then. I didn't really care. I liked playing sports. I loved to, you know, play sports with my friends and stuff, growing up, but I don't really remember looking back and caring if we were winning or losing.
Mhm.
Um, and you know, it sounds weird, but for younger people, maybe not so much. But video games are actually where I learned to be really competitive because I got good at games when I was younger. And I remember like going to sport, like I would go and play my sport and not really care if I won or lose that much, but then like go home and play video games and care. And that sounds pretty weird, I guess, but it just, we're all framed differently. But that's where video games are where I found my um, desire to get better at things and to beat people at stuff, which had obviously the amount of parables and life lessons for trading are basically infinite. And you can extract these from anything that you compete in. Sports and video games are just like the easiest examples, but they're not the only thing. Anything that you compete in probably is going to have massive lessons for these kind of things. And it probably ultimately comes down to the fact that you really have to face yourself. If you want to actually get better at a sport, um, you could probably place some blame on your teammates or whatever here and there, and you could find excuses. But at the end of the day, the only way you're actually going to get better is the acceptance that most of the responsibility falls on yourself.
Right.
So that's why I love that stuff so much. Watching all the major sports documentary, I think that obviously the best one's probably the Michael Jordan one, The Last Dance. It's like, if you
Yeah.
haven't seen it, guys, you pretty much have to, in my opinion. When you see that guy's work ethic, you realize like, wow, MJ was like athletically gifted, obviously, but that's not why he was the man. He was the man because of his mind. So, and you can carry that into your life as well,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
try to do.
So would you attribute like your competitive nature to the gaming early in your childhood? Is that where you got the, because I look at you as one of the few people in crypto that actually will confidently like showcase you're here to compete. Win, lose, or draw, you have that mindset. You have like I don't want to call it a PvP mindset, even though like a lot of what we do is PvP, but you don't shy away from the competitive nature of markets. Like we're all out here competing, but 90% of the people in the markets will kind of downplay that aspect of it. They're not talking about it, they're not tweeting about it, but you're not shy about that. And that, you think that comes from gaming?
Probably, because with gaming or even with sports, well, I just always have them in the same conversation. The competition is the competitive aspect is very literal, right? Where you see your opponent's face, right? Or you see their video game character or whatever, right? But like, it's much more of a literal competition where trading is much less literal. I would say that like, we're not, when we're over here, like all clicking buttons buy and sell individually, we're not really directly competing with one another most of the time. No other side of your orders is probably a market maker 9 times out of 10, and he doesn't give a shit about you, right? He's not competing with you.
Yeah.
The way that you are competing though, and I probably reframed this definition over time too. The way that you are competing is more in a performance over a period of time rather.
Yeah.
So to explain that more simply, if Doc and I are competing, it's not we're competing right now, we're fighting in the books, right? But maybe we're competing on who can do better over the next week, who can do better over the next quarter. That's how it should probably be framed with
Yeah.
trading, because competition's not literal with us. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I take things personally, just like Michael Jordan. Like, I have a bunch of friends, like I talked about, like in the clinic we were talking about before recording, that did phenomenal in Q4, right? And people who I feel like maybe I had a hand in helping them out early on, but they're their own person now, and they're trading phenomenally. And a couple of them definitely outperformed me in Q4. And I don't say that publicly, but now I will because it's on the podcast. But like in the back of my mind, I'm thinking of that. And I'm like, okay, I can't let, even though they're my friends, even though I love them and I talk to them every day, I'm like still thinking, I'm like, I can't let these people beat me. What am I doing wrong? How can I improve? Is there something that's in my control that I can increase? Like that's how I think about markets every single day. And for me, that comes from tennis. Like my background was in tennis. I played professionally. I didn't make it, obviously. I went to medicine, but I don't consider myself like an academic or a doctor. I just consider myself an athlete. And I try to bring that same mentality to trading because I feel like it's the same. It's the same thing. Like we are competing for each other's money. 90%. Maybe now, like we have, I don't know if we have institutional money coming in to buy our bags or whatnot. Maybe that's a meme. But at the end of the day, we are just taking each other's money. And I do think about that occasionally. Like I like this camaraderie that we all have as brothers, kind of fighting this crypto war versus TradFi. But then intra crypto, there's like your maxi of this coin, maxi of that coin, and then intra trading, you have like, well, I'm going to trade the market this way and that way. So there's all these little wars going on. And I don't know. I like to think about that. I know probably a lot of people don't, but that does drive me.
I mean, whatever you can find to motivate yourself is, it's all that matters. In the Last Dance show, there's a scene where Michael Jordan talks about one of the things that he used to inspire himself. And I just thought that like, this is the perfect amount of crazy that can propel somebody into being great. So he said that he played in a game against somebody that was a rookie, that was like some big up and coming rookie. And at the end of the game, when MJ got interviewed, he said that the rookie scored 40 on him, which was, the rookie actually dunked on MJ. And in the interview, MJ said, yeah, he was running his mouth and, all this kind of stuff. So, he'll see kind of comment. And he goes out the next game because it was in a playoff series. He goes out the next game and destroys the kid. Yeah, absolutely makes him look like a toddler, right?
Yeah.
And he gets interviewed later on and he goes, oh, yeah, I made all that up. So he literally made a conflict in his head to go and perform better. And I look at that example and I'm like, that is the perfect amount of crazy to beat other people.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that can't be taught either. I can't just say, well, I'm just going to make up this story, in my own head. I think that's very unique to guys like Michael.
He basically made it real too by saying it on the news or what, he said it on ESPN. So it became real basically.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, I can't relate to that, but that is insane.
It's just good inspiration. A good inspirational story is all. We can all do some version of that in our own head.
Yeah.
And if I'm being honest, I use certain family members that have been not so, supportive of my decisions for that reason, right? I'm gonna show you kind of thing, right? It's very immature and very childish, but it works. It actually helps me move forward. So I used to be embarrassed that I would do that. And then I realized one day, like, no, I'm just doing what needs to get, this is how I'm going to get it done. A chip on your shoulder can be effective.
And also, I was reflecting on this recently as well, because I have the same thing where I have, not direct family members, but people around me that are like, oh, well, he's trading now. Didn't he go to, you know what I mean? Like, didn't he go to med school? What is he doing? Like what's with the pivot? That's really stupid. Oh, he must not have been smart enough. So I take that personally of like, well, let me show you. And sometimes, you can get trapped in a negative mindset as well, where you're just like, that brings this fear of failure of like, oh, I don't want them to be right. Oh, I hope they're not right. Like, and you downplay what you're doing. And you can use it as motivation. You can just flip the entire script the other way and be like, I'll show them, right? So you can use the same thing in a negative way and a positive way.
For sure. That's probably pretty true with a lot of things, that people could use something very useful in a negative way, depending on how you frame it within your own mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to, flip the script here a little bit and focus on, I think you had a tweet recently that was something along the lines of like, I hated school. Like I didn't want to be a student. I didn't want to learn this kind of crap, but somehow ironically you found yourself in kind of an educator role. Could you kind of speak on how that occurred? Like what's that backstory like?
Yeah, so I didn't really ever mean to bring that up, but a lot of the times I'm just like an impulsive tweeter, so I just like impulsively said that stuff
It's out there now, man.
because I figured it might be useful for somebody, that, and like as a confidence builder for somebody. So that's why I did it, and it wasn't really something I wanted to talk about. But yeah, basically when I was really young, I was like really bad in school. Like I basically thought I was like disabled and stuff. Not maybe not disabled, that's an overstatement, but definitely thought I had a learning disability. I got diagnosed with a learning disability. And I think, basically the reasoning for why that happened was twofold. One, when I was in school, I hated it. So when I would take any sort of test, just answer the questions randomly the whole time. I didn't care at all. Like, I'm supposed to read 5 paragraphs and answer questions, and I would just literally put down random answers. So they were like, whoa, this kid's not looking good right now. So then they put a spotlight on me, and then I got nervous, and that made it like actually kind of materialize into a real thing, because they were like, oh, you have a learning disability, to put a spotlight on me. And then I basically did have a learning disability for a short period of time because I believed it, because I had a school system telling me that. So I don't know really when things changed or anything, but just basically somewhere along the line, I just realized that like my brain works, and that's not true. Probably, a lot of it probably does go back to video game stuff, because I really got competitive with games when I was younger. And you need to be able to learn, right? Because like we were just talking about, if you play a game or a sport, like, I'll stop using the video game version. We'll use tennis for Doc. The rate of play, the quality of play in tennis is ever progressing, right? Every year, people are going to get better, and younger people are going to come in that are hungrier and propel the sport forward in a more competitive stance. So you basically have to learn to teach yourself in order to be competitive at anything. Sure, you can have like a coach that helps you, but I didn't have that, so I had to learn myself. Nowadays, like video game coaches and stuff, you go on the internet, that's like a thing. But back 15 years ago, that was not a thing, right? Video game culture was like much smaller back then, from a supporting pros and kind of stuff mindset. So I basically had to learn to teach myself. And then I realized like, wow, I'm actually kind of good at teaching myself. And then to answer your question of how did I fall into that role of unironically being told when I was a kid, you're not good at teaching, you can't even teach yourself. And now you're teaching people. I just fell into it randomly by being social in our space. So I made a lot of friends early on by posting on Twitter, and then realizing like, hey, I'm in a call talking to these people that are smart, and I see that they're learning from me right now, right? I like hear the light bulb click on in their head when I say something. And like, yeah, that's basically how it happened. I realized like there's people that are like giga chads in our space nowadays. And I taught them things, and that was like a big moment for me where I realized like, wow, I can teach stuff. So hopefully that is an adequate answer.
Yeah. Do you ever think about going back to those teachers and be like, hey, look at me now? That
I
classic.
mean, it was so long ago, I don't even remember their names or what they look like or anything. So, honestly, jokes on all those people, right, is how I would look at it. I don't even remember them,
Yeah, that is nice. I love that.
No, I don't really have that kind of revenge mindset either, too. I know a lot of other people do. And to each their own. It's not like there's something wrong with it if that's what you want to do in life, but that's not my approach. I rather just forget about people personally.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way. You don't want to carry that baggage with you, right?
Unless you're using it like we were talking about earlier, like if it's a fuel source for motivation for you, then that's kind of fine. As long as you just acknowledge that's what it is, then it's totally fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I wanted to speak a little bit on like the professionalism part that I compliment you on so often to other people with, you know, journaling and doing quarterly reviews. I recently did my own like yearly review, and I got that from you. I got inspired by you. I'm like, Magus is always, you know, reflecting on quarters, months, years, kind of bringing it all together, the good, the bad, and the ugly, as you would call it, right?
Yeah.
Um, where did you get that from? And how did you, you know, continue that? You know, you find that useful, or was it just like a natural progression where you taught that?
Yeah, so I got that from my mentor Sting, which was he was a prop trader back in the day, and being able to be around him and a lot of his other professional friends, I saw the way that they approach everything from their how they're going to handle their day to how they're going to handle their quarter. So I had really good role models, and I think that started the practice, you know, that started the habits, and then the habits got really locked in for those kind of things because I saw the progress from it. I think these things can be kind of cliche for some people, like the whole like I'm gonna do a quarterly review. I think you need like you get out of it what you put into it is how I should say it, right? I feel like I get a lot out of doing like quarterly review and stuff. The yearly review, not so much because it's like too many things.
Yep.
You know, but quarterly and monthly in particular are the ones that I get the most value out of. Seeing what I did right, seeing what I did wrong, seeing how I should do things differently, those kind of things. Um, and I'll just spend a few hours at the end of the month or the end of the quarter doing that, and it does help me a lot with my progress. I think it probably ties into the mindfulness conversation, which I don't know if I want to dive into too much because I'll probably talk about it for 3 hours. But just basic mindfulness practices where you actually, instead of just moving forward in your personal timeline, taking occasional pauses to look at things and try to, I almost would describe it like try to do out of body experience, like look at yourself on your timeline occasionally instead of just being right in the middle of the timeline. And you can make a lot of, you know, kind of personal revelations that way. I know I have, you know, literally just going and walking my dog and stuff. Sometimes some of the greatest thoughts come to me that way
Yeah.
by just stopping and thinking.
I think that's really useful, even outside of trading, just like humanity nowadays. We're just so
For sure.
involved with screens, social media,
It's
constant
sad
clicks,
actually.
dopamine. Yeah. And it's really only those moments, those brief moments, like walking your dog or taking a shower right before you go to bed, that your brain kind of actually unwinds and starts like unpack all of like the events that occurred recently. Not enough people do that. I mean, I think that could not only make you a better trader, but definitely make you a better human.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, to anybody that actually sits here and listens to this chat, try to do that, please. Worst case scenario, you waste some time in your day for a couple weeks. But I think that for most people, it'll have a big positive impact on you where you do what Doc said. Just stop doing things sometimes. Do something that doesn't require very much thought or attention and just let the thoughts in your brain flow through you until they're not like, because, right, your brain gets stuck in this, you know, like RPM cycle where it's like thought, 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 right? And if you just let those go through you, eventually that RPM, the rate can slow down. And I think that's helped me a lot with anything, like you just said, anything from the kind of person I've become to just how I think about things and anything, right? It's helped me in every aspect of my life, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen this podcast. I don't know if you watched like Joe Rogan, but he had a guest named Naval Ravikant a few years ago.
Yeah,
And
I'm a little in the middle on him because actually is the person that I learned what I just said from, where he talked about instead of meditating and turning your brain off, he said, stop fighting the thoughts, just let them flow
there you
through
go.
you until there's none left. And that
There you go.
actually was a huge thing for me. The
That's
problem, I sometimes I feel like he's a little sketchy sometimes, if I'm being honest, but you know, you can still learn from people regardless, you know,
who, Naval or Joe?
Naval.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
He
I
he
mean,
did a couple of things with crypto things last cycle that were like, maybe you shouldn't have done that kind of things. You know, that's maybe save that for the small shitty influences in our space. You're a little too big to be doing things like that. Was my thought, but
gotcha.
you
Yeah,
can
you're
still
just
learn
like
things from people
milking.
regardless. You
He's
know,
just milking the bubble every which way he can. He's a
and
businessman
you
after
know, I guess I
all.
don't really blame him. You know, it's just maybe it's jealousy or something. But I do try to handle the ethics a little bit better than I try to hang on to the ethics as best as possible.
Yeah, Yeah. But it's funny because like that was the exact thing I was thinking about when you were talking about that. That was the most useful thing for me. Is like when you're meditating, you have this desk of clutter, and just sitting there and doing nothing allows your brain to just clear the desk.
For sure.
You just
And too
feel a lot.
many of us go through our lives with all that clutter never getting sorted. And that's why your brain isn't working the way it should,
Yeah.
because you're just completely overloaded.
Yeah,
It's
and
like your memory bank in your computer's full and it's
it's
slow now.
it's not comfortable to do either. I mean, it's not easy. Like no
No,
one
because you have
wants
to
to sit there.
face that. You have to face some negative things
Yeah.
sometimes,
Yeah.
but that leads to personal growth. So
Yeah.
it's, and the painful, but worth it.
Yeah, everyone kind of fight. I think it goes to like a lot of like the habits you see in our society today. We're getting so off topic of trading, but this is still
No,
just
no,
fun to
it
talk
ties
about.
in so well. I think that somebody will find value in this for
Yeah,
sure.
like I think a lot of like the habits in our society today, whether it's drinking, smoking, whatever it may be, eating, they all have to tie into that. Like you just don't want to deal with the negative stuff going in your brain, so you're distracting your brain with something else. Like, okay, let me just go get drunk and I won't think about this. Let me go smoke some pot and play some video games and I won't think about this. Let me go eat some food and hit those dopamine receptors in a different way, so I don't think about this. So yeah. Uh, wow. Okay. Really off topic there. I don't even know how to bring this back to crypto and trading. Usually I'm pretty good at these, what do you call them? I don't even know what word I'm thinking of. My brain's not working now either. Um,
I know
let's
what
bring
you
it
mean,
back.
where you're able to
Let me ask you a fun question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me ask you a fun question. What do you think the bull market top is for this cycle?
On Bitcoin, obviously.
Yeah, on Bitcoin. Unless you have a hot take that there's going to be a flippening or something.
I actually do think on a long enough time horizon that ETH will probably be much more valuable than Bitcoin. But to care about flippening, right, it's pretty, useless to care about these kind of things. It's not really a trade that you're going to put on because it's probably something that will take so long that the opportunity cost isn't even there. So I do actually think that, I don't even think that that's like an uncommon take. I think most people probably think in the long enough time horizon, if ETH can actually become the supercomputer thing that it's supposed to be, then it'll probably be worth a lot more than Bitcoin. But it's just not worth caring about any of those kind of things. It's not really a tradable thing, and that's how I look at it. But to answer your question, obviously this is like a meme, so I'm just making shit up. But if I had to guess, I would say Bitcoin will either top out. The shallow target is just beyond 100K. So like, I think that people will expect it to trade up to like 90K and then front run 100K. I think what will actually happen is it will trade through 100K, trade to like 110, 115, and then top. That would, I feel like breaking 100K and getting to like 110K would make people like so horned up for it. So like from a psychological thing, like getting over 100K, spending a little time in like 110, 115 would like, I feel like it would just debate people so hard, right?
Yeah.
From just a psychological level. So I think 110K is probably most likely. And then there's maybe a further target that's maybe like 180. I actually was thinking about this last night. That's why I have those answers pre-prepared. I was just interested in like, how would the psychological ramifications of like getting just to 100K or getting just to 100 beyond 100K, how would that affect people? I feel like the max pain scenario would be 115K distribution and top out and then go down like a whole lot from there.
Yeah. To play off of that, do you see are you in the camp of like the dying volatility, dying cycles, part of Bitcoin here, especially with now an ETF? Do you think that we're still going to get those big 50-80% corrections or bear markets? Because, you know, arguably this was the worst bear market, from a industry blowing up perspective with FTX and everything like that occurred in 2022. And if you just look at the drawdown on Bitcoin, it was the least drawdown that Bitcoin ever experienced. Do you expect that like trend to continue where each subsequent bear market has less and less drawdown?
So it was the most painful cycle from a point of view of businesses being over levered and failing, right? But it wasn't the worst from like a token drawdown, right? And like sustained period of no volatility and stuff. Like our sustained periods of low vol in this past bear market were nothing compared to what we had last cycle. Last cycle there was months where Bitcoin was in a 50-point range basically for like months at a time in 2019. So it was. What was your actual question? Sorry.
Do you think like the
Oh, the
volatility,
volatility.
dying
Yeah,
off to
yeah.
the downside?
So I should probably preface it with saying that it's like it is just a guess, right? Because I don't have a crystal ball. I don't actually know. Somebody out there is probably smart enough to game theorize out all the little variables that will go into this. So I don't actually know. My gut tells me that it's definitely going to reduce vol, though, right? Because as I've traded Bitcoin over the years, the volatility is reduced a lot because of who's essentially running it at periods in time, and liquidity, right? So people complain like Bitcoin's so illiquid. Yeah, people should have traded in 2018 and tell me about low liquidity, right? Our liquidity is worse than it was probably in 2021 right now, but it's still we're so much more liquid than we used to be. So I think that that's a trend that will persist, right? More and more liquidity will come to Bitcoin and to crypto because it represents an incredibly good opportunity for liquidity providers.
Yeah, I wanted to wrap up here because I feel like we got so much good conversation or such good conversations up to this point. I thought I would hit you with some like rapid fire questions for like the last segment of this.
Cool. I'll try to keep them short. I have a tendency to ramble, but
No, I mean take as long as you want. I just have like a list that I'm like, let me get through these ones, some fun ones here.
all right, let's do it.
Yeah, all right. So, what would you say was the best lesson from 2023? Because for sure, I know you mentioned you're 9 years in, but there's still stuff that you're learning.
Yeah, that is a really hard question to answer because it's just like there's so many things that will start popping up. So probably what I'm going to pick isn't actually the best because in order to do that, I would have to really set aside some time and look through journals and stuff. I think last year, probably the thing that helped like is the biggest kind of leap forward for me was maybe realizing, people go through this like learning curve of like TA and like flow and all these things are like the end all be all, right? Like if I can just learn how to draw support and resistance lines, I'm going to be able to make money. And then you kind of realize maybe things are not as clear as they once seemed. And that, maybe things are things are a lot more murky once you start to get into it. I think last year, probably my biggest takeaway was the realization that none of it matters while all of it matters at the same time. I could basically summarize it all with TA as a meme, right? Everybody's heard that, where I don't really give a shit about like hard technical setups and stuff anymore, but they still like coincidentally are part of what I do, if that makes any sense.
I mean, a lot of it since I think I honestly think crypto is just like such a naive industry in trading that maybe a lot of stuff that we do is self-fulfilling prophecy because a lot of the people with, like I think the meta's changed too. When it's like low vol, you don't have the naive traders. When there's high vol, you start doing triangle stuff again. Like a couple months ago, you had that triangle meme. You're like, we're just trading triangles again, which is probably something you never used for all of 2023 until probably December or whatever.
Yeah, and it was because it was the right regime. And it's almost like that full circle process of being a trader where when you start out, you're probably drawing triangles. And then you learn that like, well, none of this is kind of stupid maybe. But then once you start to really understand the market, you understand what the triangle means, right? And what the triangle means, obviously it's contextual, but if you're getting, like the classic triangle where you have equal highs, right? But higher lows, right? That's like the best triangle that you can see. It's showing you that there's obviously a very strong ask that's creating all the equal highs, but there's also a strong bid that is giving you higher lows along the way. So 99 times out of 100, that triangle is going to break upwards, right? It's like kind of taking that step away and realizing that it's all kind of that the actual triangle or the shape itself means nothing. And what matters is like what's creating the triangle.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the best way to explain it.
Yeah. The way that I see it is kind of like, the confluence of different ideas and stuff like that. A flow trader will see it one way, microstructure trader will see another way, AMT trader will see it's the confluence of everyone being aligned that kind of just creates that self-fulfilling prophecy of the triangle, right?
Yeah. Oh, and then the other thing too is that like people all try to get intricate with ideas of flow and stuff. And I think that like the longer you dive into that, the more you realize that like a lot of directional stuff is really as simple as somebody just saying, I feel like doing this right now, right? Somebody that actually has impact on markets saying, well, I'm up enough. It's time to start unloading. Oh, this thing's down enough. Its fair value is way up here. Maybe it's time to start buying. And that really like some dude deciding that. And that dude's decision has nothing to do with anything you're thinking of, probably too. It's like all on their own systems, and like they're operating on a completely different spectrum than you are. And some guy just wakes up and goes, yeah, I'm up enough. Let's start TWAPing out of this. Right. And then that creates the top. Right. So it's like this kind of full circle approach where you lean into like simple technical things and then realize that they're a meme, but then like later on you realize that they're a meme because of the underlying, like they're self-fulfilling because of the underlying factors, right?
Yeah. All right, we're going back to the rapid fire questions here then. What was I asked you, what was the best lesson from 2023, but more of a broad sense from your old trading career. You must have had like one hill that was harder to tackle than all the others. What was that hardest challenges for you? Like, what was the hardest challenge for you as a trader to overcome? Maybe a bad habit or something like that.
Probably being able to actually bet hard in the right periods. So everybody's heard the bet more meme, and it's a common like platitude in our space for a reason, because it's actually a pretty valuable concept that if you learn how to bet hard in the right moments, it's actually very useful. So I basically would say that all of us are going to be good at one or the other, and it's hard to be good at both. You're either good at making money and bad at keeping it, or you're good at keeping money and bad at making it. And a lot of the time when you get experience, you start to lean towards the good at keeping it, bad at making it, especially because the people that have suffered catastrophic loss and dealt with really bad days. So I just have had periods earlier in my career where I just got wiped. Like March 2022 or March 2020, excuse me, is the perfect example, when Bitcoin basically went down 70% in 24 hours. I misplayed that really badly. I just basically started to get bullish way too early and got run over, and I lost a lot of my money that day. So as I got into the bull market following that, right, because the bull market basically emerged right after that, right? That was basically the big event that, was able to source liquidity for the bull market. Betting really hard in the beginning of the bull market was hard for me, right? Because I'm like coming from this risk averse mindset, fear of losing. I've endured significant loss that was, shook me. The March, some context, right? The March nuke happened a month after I quit my job. So I literally quit my job and then lost a huge amount of my money the next month. So I'm like, thinking I'm an idiot, I screwed my life up kind of thing. So digging myself out of that, to answer your question, digging myself out of that fear to be able to bet hard in the opportune moments is probably the thing I'm the most proud of, because it was very, very difficult for me to do. I still to this day have that underlying fear of getting blown out.
That's got to be a huge mental hurdle to overcome, to be honest, because I think people naturally get way too protective of like the remaining poker chips, right?
Exactly.
When you're on to fumes, you're like, well, how do I bet this? If I lose this, it's over for me. I don't have that exact experience as you do, where I just blew up, but I started crypto with, in hindsight, too few poker chips. And that consistently made me in 2022, 2023 bet less, because I'm always like, I need to be protective. I never know you never know what could happen, et cetera, et cetera. And I played all of last year with at least 40% to 50% stables. And I did very well, but like in hindsight, it always felt like that fear of failure, fear of like screwing up, because I didn't have enough chips. That was hard to overcome for me. So like, not the exact same experience as you, but kind of in the same line, that I think that for me in 2023, that's a huge lesson for me, is like kind of just when you have those high conviction plays, when the market's playing on your terms, to really just trust yourself and trust the system and bet more.
Yeah, everybody probably goes through some version of that kind of lesson. And a lot of us will struggle to get through it. I definitely had, like, it wasn't something I got through quickly, right? It took me many, many months. But like actually more realistically, it took me like, a year or two to like really get through it. Like at the end of the bull market was unironically when I was most comfortable betting, which is a huge psychological thing that we already touched on in the beginning. That's just how our brains are wired, that as we watch something progress, we get more comfortable with it, which is unironically the time when you should be least comfortable with it. But that is one of the things that helped me, was like, basically we've been in a bull market for so long. If I look at my stats, when I buy, it's pretty positive. So I learned to just like actually start betting harder behind that. I also had other issues too, right? Where I had other, like the March one was the biggest drawdown period, but I did have other ones as well. I think it would have been either at the very end of 2020 or the end or the beginning of 2021. I was really bullish on ETH, and which it worked, right? But in the process, I almost blew myself out again on an ETH long because I just positioned it the wrong time, and the drawdown was crushing me. And I like ETH went up like, a lot after that, but it's just, yeah, good lessons around, when to risk and when not to. I mean, those are just some of the most important things that you're going to learn.
I think the next question I have goes hand in hand with this one, which is when, like you said, when people get blown out or take huge drawdown, they get a little risk adverse. They don't bet enough. I think I saw that this was my number one most asked question in the DMs and Discord and everything last quarter was just like, I'm sidelined. I have too many stables. How do I get in the market? People are just so scared to step in. There's that so much bear PTSD. I'm buying a top. I don't know how to get in, whatever. Is there any advice that you would give to that sideline participant if you were getting asked this question?
So first thing I could probably say would be like preparation. So like success, it's a very common platitude is that success is the combination of preparation and hard work. So having proper plans. So let me give you an example to maybe better explain that. When we're in 2022, I was super bearish. I was super bearish the whole time. And we got to a point though where I started to do that self-reflection that we were talking about at the beginning about my thesis, right? As we started to get into the lower 20s and stuff like that, or maybe even into the 30s, I probably started to wonder this too, right? At what point am I going to be wrong, right? I've been so right about, the bearishness. At what point am I going to be wrong? So basically I started to depict plans of what it's going to look like if we need to get bullish again, which basically was reclaiming $20,000. But I talked a lot in the group back then about some of the other things I was looking for. And so my first thing would be to have proper plans about what it's going to look like if you need to change back the other direction, right? If you're betting hard on a trend, you need to have a rough idea of these are the things that will look like if the trend is going to be done soon, right? So preparation, always really important. The next thing I could say would be almost having comfort with front running your plans sometimes too. So rather than saying we're going to, like, if we look at 20K, it's the perfect example. I think I can actually just pull up a chart really quickly since we're watching it. If we look at 20K, this was the level I wanted to see us get back above in order to be bullish. But if you had just waited for the 20K retest, you had to wait 3 months for that to come. That's a long time, right? Do you really want to miss an entire quarter because you're waiting for a perfect retest? So what I talked about in the group a lot was I just started front running my plan. So I actually started buying, like I bought Litecoin first in December, and then I started buying Bitcoin like right away. And I just ended up front running my plan. And the whole time I'm doing that, because you're worried, like, what if I'm buying into a local high and we're about to go down, right? That's your fear as a sideliner. You just have risk defying levels and stuff. If we start to do this or start to do that, then I can either start selling the spot and accept my loss or look to hedge it potentially. So hopefully that maybe is useful. Having predetermined plans, like another thing, if we're looking at the same chart, the highest Bitcoin buys I had in 2023 were 25K. And I mapped out this region way ahead of time. We're over here at the beginning of quarter two, and I map out my plan that I want to buy 25K Bitcoin spot. I have my plan, which was basically low volume node plus last year and current year's VWAP. So it's a really important macro support. So it takes forever to get there, right? It takes months, but eventually you get to that region, and it was the plan, so I bought it. Yeah. So hopefully that's helpful.
Okay. Game plan. So to summarize, game plan, and don't be scared to front run sometimes to get into the market, right? You can't get those perfect retests. I think that's the struggle for a lot of people. Like even at that candle all the way on the right, the expansion above 30K, that gave no one perfect retest, right? You had no 30K retest. It just launched and it grinded upwards, and during that grind upwards from like 32, or was it like 35 to like 40,
Yeah,
no
34.
one got an entry. Like everything was so shallow and eaten up and eaten up and eaten up. And this was the moment where a lot of people were like, well, what do I do? What do I do? And alts were just ripping and ripping and ripping. And naturally what people do is like when we get that first correction right in the middle of that comp that you have there, people are like, oh, it's over. Like we're done. Like
Right.
I'm buying the top, right? So
And buying these sell-offs is really your only opportunity to get good positioning. I positioned on this one for my swing long. So that's the only opportunity you get when you're getting a value shift upwards, where you're just getting over and over again, you're getting higher lows while you have relatively equal highs. This is the triangle formation we were talking about earlier. I think I'll change this color to red so you guys can see it. I mean, when you see that kind of pattern, equal highs and just consecutive higher lows over and over again, this is going to break upwards the significant majority of the time.
Yeah.
And it's the triangle itself doesn't matter. It's what the market's showing you, which was that the bid was strong the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a lot of clues, but we're going to have you giving us an entire lecture to explain that if you had to. But yeah, TLDR, be prepared, right? Just be prepared, have plans. Don't let the market dictate the terms. Make sure you have if-then plans always.
And be comfortable with the idea that you're going to be wrong about it, your thesis, right? If you've been right about a thesis, eventually that thesis will die and you won't be right about it anymore. And you have to have that humility to let go of the ego and just be okay with like being wrong right now. And okay, it's time to pivot to something else. Because when you get caught up on there being right or wrong, you dig yourself holes. And that's how people get stuck in the being perpetually bearish during an entire uptrend or vice versa, right? Which we've all seen.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be that guy.
I have a friend that new bro, if you're listening, shout out to you. He always posts this meme that's like a Pepe bell curve meme, and the left curve, right curve is saying I should take the risk, and the mid curve is I need to wait for the perfect time.
Yeah.
And I think that translates so well to crypto, where like those comfy entries really don't reward you as much as the ones that really make you, doubt yourself, struggle, feel stressed, feel like you're taking a massive risk. You get rewarded on those way more than those comfy entries.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and most of the time when you get very comfy, easy, clean retests, those are going to actually the weakest reactions.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, you're obviously we're alluding to.
Yeah, this is actually one of the greatest lessons I learned from you last year. It was like very early on, Q1 or Q2, and you're saying if the market is strong, you don't get liquidity sweeps. Why would you? There's demand, right? Everyone wants to bid that level. There's going to be stacked bids. You're always going to get front run, which is why you don't get any sweeps in these regimes. And I think if I hadn't heard you say that in Q1 and I had to wait for that to click for myself, I probably would have wasted a lot of opportunities last year. So I'm very thankful for that lesson early on.
Cheers.
Yeah. All right. So I've already asked you about your Bitcoin target. Do you have any hot takes for this cycle? Any like soul flipping ETH, anything fun like that you're thinking about?
Again, I probably need to cook this up ahead of time, but I don't know. Not
Here,
really.
I'll just ask you this from here. What do you think's the better bet at current prices? Solana at 94, ETH at 2,400. What's the better bet for the rest of the cycle?
The nuance in this question is about risk.
No, I want the left curve answer. I want the dummy answer.
Solana then, right?
Okay,
I mean,
Solana?
yeah, I mean, ETH's probably going to underperform Solana still over time would be my opinion. I mean, I said that at the beginning of last year, and I actually got a lot of shit for that one, to be honest. But I still kind of believe that it's just like kind of the basic dumb argument about that we could take to meme coins or Bitcoin or something. Like Bitcoin's a potential to appreciate a large amount is diminished by the fact that it's already a large asset. So the same argument would hold true with ETH being the second largest. Its potential to appreciate is lower than something that is less expensive than it. I mean, that basically is the left curve argument right there. Like it's cheap, so it's good, right?
Yeah.
I also I've been perpetually bullish on Solana for a long time. And I always make the argument, I don't understand the chain. I don't understand anything, right? I am so completely uninformed when it comes to the fundamentals, the technology, anything. You want to know why I'm bullish? Because I have a bunch of friends that are bullish on it and a bunch of friends that are always building on Solana. And that makes me feel confident in Solana's future, that I actually have lots of smart friends that are building stuff out on it. You know what I mean?
there's actually so much alpha in that, and like you know, distributing the mind share in crypto, because a lot of my best plays last year came from suggestions from my friends. They're the ones in the trenches doing the research, and I'm just applying their research to the charts,
Love that.
and kind of milking it from them. So yeah, no one man can tackle this entire industry. um Last one here. I know you don't do NFTs, but I'm going to ask you an NFT question anyways. Miladies or pudgy penguins?
Damn, dude. You're like setting me up to have a community come and just destroy me either way with this one. It's lose-lose.
You gotta pick one
Both
affiliation.
communities are crazy. So I'm honestly probably more scared of the Milady people because they obviously seem like much more of internet schizos, where the pudgy people are going to be much more of a normal person, I would imagine. If I had to pick between the two, I do think the choice is obvious, though. Pudgy, because it's cute, right? Cute is probably the most valuable factor in that kind of realm, in my opinion. Something that I ignored a little bit early on, but I learned this lesson in 2024 or in 2021, excuse me, that cute is cute is how you appeal to like the largest number of people. Does that make sense? Right? Like
Yeah.
if you have all these different NFT projects, like I don't even know anything about Milady too, so please don't fucking attack me, guys. But it's just like it's a little bit grimier and stuff, right? Cute is like what appeals to your regular ass person in life. It's how you're gonna get your aunts to want to buy it, or right? Your neighbor is because it's cute. So
Yeah, I think the
that's what I
pudgy
would say.
community did a fantastic job of like crossing that barrier to the normie side too. They have
Oh,
like
for
plush
sure. They're
dolls
like
and
in the
stuff.
stores and stuff. You can go buy pudgy like stuffed animals at the store now.
Yeah, that's the, and I don't think people that are buying those pudgies in stores have any idea there's an NFT collection. They're just buying it because it's a cute doll, right?
And I mean, that probably just speaks to their brand success actually, right? Because like just buying it because it's cute, right? Like that's a W for them, in my opinion. A huge W.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm gonna just for listeners out there, I'm still betting on Miladies because I like the schizo cult. I wanna bet on them. I think they'll have another maybe Elon fueled. Shout out Elon if you're listening. Pump my bags, bro.
I can weave a really useful lesson into this. It's the idea that with something, if you want something to grow, you need to target the largest group of people possible because that like allows for the most potential upside and the fastest growth, all those kind of things, etc.
Yep.
Um, so that's just what I see with like something like Pudgy, for example, is that like it's just so good at targeting, or you could even take it one step further too. Um, last big cycle, I played a bunch of like narratives, right? And if you look at them, it's like DeFi, NFTs, metaverse, and gamify were the big narratives last cycle. I missed NFTs, but I did good on the other ones. And something I thought about a lot was at the beginning of the cycle, I used to try to tell my friends that are not into crypto to buy DeFi tokens all the time because I was super confident in it. I had yeeted a lot of my money into it and I was like ready to go on DeFi. I would explain that to them and it would go in one ear and out the other, right? You're talking about, oh, I can borrow money. Like they don't care about that kind of stuff. But when I showed them on the metaverse, a lot of them were hesitant at first. But then when I explained it to them the left curve way of the Ready Player One analogy, they were like, oh, hell yeah, bro.
Yeah.
So my point is that your actual end goal for a lot of these things is appeal to as wide of a variety of as possible. And something
Smart.
like DeFi is a terrible narrative to get people to be interested in because the only person that cares about DeFi are nerds, right? And something like the metaverse appeals to basically everybody, right? Anybody that's even slightly interested in the internet or technology, right, is going to be like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I'll digress from that, but that whole like targeting a lot of people and the idea of an aggregate of opinions is so much more valuable than individual opinions.
Yeah.
Been
Agreed.
big game changer for me in my thought process.
Agreed. The reason I pull up these two NFTs in the first place is because I believe they're both like met the concept of Lindy. They both overcame a massive FUD event and retained value. I think Pudgies went to zero at some point, and rebounded off that. Miladies have had tons of FUD and they're just surviving. Those are the kind of not coins, projects, etc. that I want to bet on. Like whether it's Bitcoin overcoming so much FUD or anything like that, I think those are good investments to make. So I'm not an
Sure, and
NFT
you
guy,
like
but
the
that's just
hated
how I
trade
see
as
that.
well because you did a lot of the hated trades last year.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of the bread and butter. I seek those out whenever they're available. But
There's
yeah,
nothing
Magus,
funnier than the fact that things go up because everybody hates it. Like, it's such a beautiful concept. Oh,
I
you guys don't like this? Well, have fun watching it go up.
I was mid curve about this as hell in 2022 summer during that merge rally. I was so frustrated watching coins like ETC outperform. I was like, what? This is junk. Why is this going up? And Hasako would just keep pouring salt in the wounds and being like, you're stupid. It's already pumped meme and stuff like that. And I was like, all right, I need to get over myself and start submitting to these things. Otherwise, I'm going to perpetually be underperforming everyone. Man, beautiful discussions today. I just want to leave you with one thing. It's something I ask everyone that's outside of trading. We talked about a lot of stuff outside of trading today, but just one last one. Do you have any imparting wisdom for the listeners outside of trading, whether it be health, love, happiness, anything like that?
Damn, you ask heavy, like it's like a simple question, but it's actually like a heavy hitting question underneath the veil. I don't know if I want to say like the obvious things about like your family and your health should be the most important things for you. That's like a given, that kind of stuff. Probably could just go back to the mindfulness thing, right? I mean, I think proper mindfulness practice will have a positive impact on basically every aspect of your life. It doesn't matter what you want to do in life. I just think that's the ability to stop and observe yourself and observe others will probably help. So that's probably what I would say.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic answer, actually. No one really talks about that. And I'm glad that we got to cover a little bit of that today and sidetrack from the trading. Like you said, someone out there is going to find that very valuable.
I mean, it's a game changer for me. And I just made I made the conscious decision one day to work on it. Like the example I gave in the Paragon group on the stream last week, that I used to have to ride the train to go to school every day. And I would look around and it's all the kids are on their phones. All the old people are reading books and actually using their eyeballs and observing things. And I was like, wow, I don't want to be like the rest of these young kids that are just not even seeing life in front of them.
Yeah.
I think that was where I started that path.
Yeah. Me personally, I get lost in the sauce very often, and I have to like pull myself out of that. And it takes a while because you don't recognize yourself falling down the hole. But before you know it, you're like, well, I didn't put pants on today, and I just sat in front of the desk. Oh, I should probably take care of myself a little bit better. But yeah. All right, Magus. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope we can do this again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I always like having those kind of conversations. Less technical and more philosophical, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we'll do this again soon, Mac. Thanks so
For
much.
sure.
Yep. Take care, everyone.